So, rule 2. Take it away from here.
Okay, so rule 2 is all about treating yourself like someone you are responsible for helping. And did we have an example explaining what it's about, or should I just talk about it?
Don't have an example for this.
Oh.
Well, I do. We've each chosen something we feel like summarizes it or is important to the chapter.
Okay, I'll just use Jordan Peterson's, should I call it metaphor or whatever. I guess it's not a metaphor, I just didn't remember the word. Anyways, what he's basically saying is that if your pet is sick, then you will always make sure to give your pet its medication exactly when it's prescribed. But when it comes to yourself, people are not that good at basically taking care of themselves. And then he goes into the reasons to why that is. Some people would call it original sin.
He goes into a lot of it here. This is a deep
Yeah,
chapter. It's a giant rabbit hole where there's a few steps you have to take through.
certainly.
Where he tries to explain his rationality through ancient stories. We go back to Genesis 1, which is
And two.
and 2 and 3 briefly, where we are talking about the creation of the world, where he talks about different ideas that our forefathers had. Not to exclude women in that one, because they're our forefathers too.
Of course.
Let me see. Treat yourself. Somebody's responsible. It is taking care of yourself in essence. He talked about, as you said before, that you're more likely to treat well your dog or give your medication to the dog, even though it could be faulty, because essentially the doctors are relatively about as competent, at least in his assumption that they are.
Yeah, it's basically all about we treat things that we don't think have sinned in any way. And I'm not talking about a religious type of sin. I'm just talking about doing something wrong in your life.
You feel
And the
like
fact,
feeling like you're corrupt, and the unconscious dog is innocent because it kills because it's hungry, not
yeah,
for darker pleasures.
exactly. It's not as complex as we are.
Well, at least logically. I think I want to kick it off with with your quote to
Yeah,
start with, because I feel like that's a good entry point
let's go over it.
to start with. So let's see there, and then we hide my shit. What? There we go. Now we have it. Let's find the audio for it. This is going to be in 2 parts, so this is going to be a little bit weird. So let's take it away here. It's going to start now.
Beauty shames the ugly. Strength shames the weak. Death shames the living. And the ideal shames us all. Thus we fear it, resent it, even hate it. And of course, that's the theme next examined in Genesis in the story of Cain and Abel. What are we to do about that? Abandon all ideals of beauty, health, brilliance, and strength? That's not a good solution. That would merely ensure that we would feel ashamed all the time.
Anything we can add here before we go over to the second part of the quote?
No, there's something wrong with mine, so we didn't start playing, so I'm just reading it. So
Okay.
we can just try to jump to the second one.
I'll just go straight and play the audio then for the second
Yeah.
one. Or second part of it.
Sure.
Deserve it. I don't want women who can stun by their mere presence to disappear just so that others can feel unself-conscious. I don't want intellects such as John von Neumann's to vanish just because of my barely grade 12 grasp of mathematics. By the time he was 19, he had redefined numbers. Numbers! Thank God for John von Neumann. Thank God for Grace Kelly and Anita Ekberg and Monica Bellucci. I'm proud to feel unworthy in the presence of people like that. It's the price we all pay for aim, achievement, and ambition.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's tear this apart then, because there's lots of part of this and a lot of assumptions that has been made beforehand.
Yeah, there is a lot about this. So I think there are two major sides to this quote, and it is a little bit scary to tear into. Because, first of all, yeah, it's right. Secondly, there's like, what should I call it, a huge dark side when you talk about all of this, right? When it comes to jealousy, when it comes to people having issues.
Well,
But,
the first aspect of it, right, if I'm understanding it right, is idealisms or idols, so to speak, or idols of embodiments of idols, of aspects when we consider things we want, like beauty, strength, intellect, those kind of things, right?
Yeah.
Where we have ideals, which is where we compare ourselves to them, and then by the comparison of those ideas, we judge ourselves, and in most cases, we will find ourselves wanting.
yeah, that's exactly what I'm getting at with through too. I'm just thinking about it from like a more in real life or a day-to-day perspective, you know?
Well, a real life example is the big beautiful fat women movement. I'm sorry, big beautiful women. I believe they're called movement, right?
I like how you have to include fat.
I know. It's so bad. Sorry.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Demonetized.
Yeah. Like we're gonna monetize this anyways. We would make like zero. Well, whatever. But anyways, what I'm talking about is that from a it's far.
Well, it
I
leads
can't
into the
remember the
question:
word.
what are we to do about that, right? Because we have people who are beautiful. We have people who are smart. We have people who are strong, fast, talented. We have people like Elon Musk, right? So how are we
Yeah.
gonna do about that? Are we gonna resent them because of what they stand for and what they represent? Are we gonna resent that, abandon that, to change it, and therefore hide ourselves from these ideals, or their judgment?
Yeah, but that's the exact thing. Rather, you made me remember what I wanted to say, which is that, sure, totally agree with all that. But you also have, as I said, a dark side of all this. You know, beauty shames the ugly. Think about bullying, for example. Think about all the girls and also a lot of men who have problems with issues about their body. And it does primarily come from a society which is just fixating super hard on the beauty aspect. And the entire society is pushing towards it. And I don't think it's that easy to just not think about it then, you know?
Well, this comes into which is why he talks about the creation of the world and why the world has come to, because they've removed everything unnecessarily from the stories, right? Once they've eaten the fruit of knowledge, or from the tree of knowledge, then they become self-conscious, and here they discover they're naked, right? So they discover something. They learn to see. They get the ability to see their weaknesses and their shortcomings, which is what a lot we played on, and it is no wonder if we feel unworthy or we feel less compared to these ideals. Though I can understand why we don't need to needlessly obsess about them and trying to aim ourselves to be perfect all the time. It's a weird concept, because I'm trying to say this right. I don't think I'm doing it.
No, I have the exact same problem. I'll try to clarify what I mean. So, personally, I do agree with most of what he's saying. And as you can see from how he has written this, he's talking about, I don't want. And like from a personal perspective, I agree with everything that he's saying. But there are a lot of people who would have huge problems with, for example, the quote, I don't want women who can stand by their mere presence to disappear just so that others can feel unself-conscious. Yeah, I'm pretty sure a lot of people would have huge problems with that quote alone. Because what it kind of sounds like is just like, well, I don't want a really pretty woman who you can barely look at to just disappear because others don't like that they are so pretty by comparison, right?
Yeah, I don't feel a beauty. Yes, I feel like he could have chosen another one, but I think beauty is a perfect example in the sense of we shame them sometimes, but we also strive to be it, and especially with somebody who's prettier or appear, especially appearances are something that makes us compare, right?
Yeah.
And it's easy to compare in a sense, right? Because every society has some ideals, or have the ideal woman in quotation marks, or the ideal man,
Yeah.
and we cannot help ourselves to compare to them.
Yeah.
So, which is what he doesn't want. He doesn't want the comparison to end. I don't think because somebody's so self-conscious they can't handle it, or it's hard because there's a few levels to it that's hard to explain.
Yeah, I think the entire thing is though that, or not the entire thing, but the problem as I see it is that we live in a society that's so full of, what should I call it, beautiful people being plastered up everywhere.
We are
There's,
we're hyper exposed
yeah, exactly.
to this ideal to an unhealthy degree.
And you can see it even in really young kids nowadays. The girls start using makeup earlier and earlier because they don't want to be ugly compared to the other girls, or it's just,
I don't think that's the right comparison. We should look to our celebrities, or what we perceive as celebrities, because we have a lot of those who have no merits at all.
no.
And we use them as an ideal, which to me is a false idol. Because they have no merit, they have nothing worth striving for.
Well, they have their beauty.
Not necessarily, none of them necessarily is that pretty, I would, in my opinion, but that's up to debate, each to each his own, right?
Yeah, a lot of them are really pretty. Come on, dude.
Some of them are pretty, some of them are ugly, and some of them are just famous because they're famous because they are known to be famous. It's a weird concept in itself. So,
Okay.
like, you're famous because you know a guy, or because you had a sex tape with a person. Why does that make you an idol?
Are you talking about Kim Kardashian or something?
In this case, yes. I mean, all to them, they've made a brilliant money scheme out of that one thing, and they keep doing it. I mean, that's brilliant business strategy in my estimation.
Yeah, but the reason why Kim Kardashian is so famous right now is because she's hot. Like, she made a sex tape. But a lot of celebrities have made sex tapes. Why was her such a big hit? Well, partly because of how they played it off, partly because she's fucking hot. Or she was.
Mostly because of how she played it off. There's not infinite number of equally beautiful women, but there's a lot of them. So I believe the most of it is how she played it, and she keeps playing it, which is great. That shows me there's somebody in that family that knows how to market themselves really well, which is an aspect you should come. Who you could just say it out loud. I don't know anything about them other than
Chris, the mom.
Okay, yeah.
She's like the manager of every single one of them, something.
Well,
at least the manager of Kim.
Then she's the brains behind the operation. It would seem, to a degree, and she knew how to exploit it. Hands off to her.
What I'm saying is that I'm not trying to claim that they are the most attractive people in the world or something.
That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I felt like your claim was.
But they are certainly, for some people, really attractive. And they are an ideal. Like, for example, Kylie Jenner with her lips and shit like that.
They have become
so
an ideal.
many girls.
They have become an ideal of beauty, right? That's the thing.
Yeah. Certainly.
Though I don't believe that's a natural beauty, which I think is more valuable. But
so, wait, I guess so. What you're basically saying is they are an ideal of beauty, but the reason why they are an ideal of beauty is not because they're beautiful; it's because they're famous, get a lot of exposure, and therefore they become ideals for beauty.
Because people want to be famous, or at least look to be recognizable as somebody famous, or with somebody that's famous.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
though I feel like I butchered that sentence. Last sentence there.
Doesn't matter. I think I get pretty much what you mean, anyways.
And then he talks about into the price of these ideals, right? That to have these extremely talented people who are pushing the borders of pushing the borders in between the order and chaos, right? They push the unknown and make it known, and take all of that potential chaos into something greater. Which we have the guy who redefined numbers, which is in itself incredibly important, and something I don't think any of us could really hope for. And if that's the price we have to pay to feel ashamed when we compare ourselves to them, is that price then worth it, rather than ushering them away and abandoning all of the ideals we have to strive for?
Yeah.
And there I would agree with him. It is worth it to feel unworthy. If the
totally
only
agree.
price we actually have to pay is feeling ashamed because we don't actually feel it up to it, or live up to the ambition or the ideal. But that also gives us a goal you can strive it around to try to reach, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think that's a bad price to pay for what we get by striving.
Yeah. I do want to just clarify a little bit. Like, we don't probably, I don't think we have any viewers right now, but if we are posting this on YouTube, people go back on the WhatsApp, etc. I do want to kind of clarify my position here. So personally, I love feeling unworthy. I'm not. It sounds like I'm a cunt.
No, you sound like a masochist, boy.
Okay, so I'll explain it. The thing is, I love having goals in my life. Like, I don't feel like I'm really well trained right now, but I love having something to aspire to. That's why I work out like 3 times a week. I always want to get better. I want to get better at everything. And the reason why you want to get better is because there are other people out there who are much better than you. And it gives you like a goal in your head to reach. And I love it. I'm just saying that some people, like, there's a really big societal problem right now about people who, it's just too much for them to live up to these ideals, or even try to reach higher. Is just too much.
Well, then I would go into the debate we had before, right? Are you ready to meet the world then? Have you set your house in order?
Yeah.
Or these people, obviously, they don't have, to a degree, if they're that bothered by it. That's my personal opinion of it, anyway. Because then I feel like they're then looking at it wrong, instead of finding out what their strengths are and what they can provide to society. They go, look, she's more beautiful than me, I can't provide the beauty that I expect. Where they maybe have something that's even better. And I don't feel like there needs to be that much of a focus on comparison and being so beautiful, which is what I'm guessing that's the most problem. That's at least the most vocal problem of young teenagers with social media, especially.
Yeah, certainly.
Oh god, I butchered that. I'm gonna clarify. People are feeling self-conscious because they all, on social media, only see perfection. They don't see the bad in other people's life. They don't see the horrible. They don't see the people without full makeup on.
Yeah.
They only show one side of the social. They only show one side of their life on social media, and they hide all of the bad stuff that's going on around them, all of the negative, and try to force positivity. And then they might also not have enough responsibility to bear with the burden of living.
Yeah. I do think there's probably, I'm not going to get into this, but I do think a lot of it also may depend on personality types, though. Of course, some of it is how you're raised, what ideals you have, what your parents taught you, things like that. But I think some of it is also just how you are as a person. Jordan Peterson always talks about compassionate people and blah, 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 all these different types. And I do think there are certain types of people who are way more they have a way higher chance to actually be negatively affected by this kind of thing. And
I believe
you
it's
know,
they're
I
high in neuroticism, right? I think that's the one. You're neurotic,
I don't know.
or you are acutely aware of your surrounding, and then reflect that in of yourself. But yes, there are certain personality types that are more susceptible to these comparisons, and then going into the negative side and only see why their shortcomings and not the potential.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think, oh shit, this is gonna sound so, what should I call it, like almost social justice warriors to say, but I think people like us, who don't have the problem at all, like, I can't put myself into the mindset of someone who has a problem like that. Like, for example, someone who gets an eating disorder uh, from this, basically. Like, I can't mentally put myself into what they're thinking or feeling. So I can't really say how big of an issue it is because I don't feel that way.
No, I think you're looking at it the wrong way. I think there's a way you can look at it to put yourself in their shoes. I feel like they are being possessed by the need to try to, by the need of the idol to need to be perfect. They get possessed by it. It consumes them, much like an addiction consumes you with a positive feedback loop from chapter 1.
Yep. But the question is, how do they break that? How do you actually get out of that?
Well, you start by one. You make one change to a habit, and then you make another one, and then you start spiraling out of control. And at one point, hopefully, you'll manage. I think it's treated a little bit like addiction, in a way. I'm not completely sure about the treatment for that. My speciality is in addiction, ironically enough.
Yeah, you and all your cocaine, right?
All of not cocaine, but something that's just as bad.
I know. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I know.
So for later reference, Nick has a serious cocaine addiction.
No, it's clearly epilepsy. It's clearly ecstasy, but
Oh yeah, of course. Ecstasy, that's the one.
that's totally the one.
But yeah, should we jump to the next quote? Or my next quote?
Your next quote, I believe it.
I think that's the next one.
Mine covers both yours and mine, so I chose it as mine. But but what you chose, or the segment you chose, is essentially the same. So we can play that, and then I want to play some clips for audio for what he defines as order and what he defines as chaos. Though
wait. Oh yeah, yes. Shit, sorry. I thought I had two quotes.
Well, you sent me two quotes, and one of them, yeah, one of
Yeah, okay.
the other one you sent me, I chose an earlier part, and then I included that part as well.
Oh yeah, okay.
So let's play that.
Yep.
You need to consider the future and think, what might my life look like if I were caring for myself properly? What career would challenge me and render me productive and helpful, so that I could shoulder my share of the load and enjoy the consequences? What should I be doing when I have some freedom to improve my health, expand my knowledge, and strengthen my body? You need to know where you are so you can start to chart your course. You need to know who you are so that you can understand your armament and bolster yourself in respect to your limitations. You need to know where you are going so that you can limit the extent of chaos in your life, restructure order, and bring the divine force of hope to bear on the
we have to
world.
listen to both?
Both are part of the same, though. We can take the first one and go through that. I can bring that up on screen now. Let's see. This is gonna be. Let's see. So that's this is this is the full quote, right? And they basically talk about what the thought process for how you treat yourself like you're taking care of somebody else. That's essentially what it is.
Okay.
I'll play the second one, or the second part now, which starts after limitations.
Yeah, sure.
You need to know where you are going so that you can limit the extent of chaos in your life, restructure order, and bring the divine force of hope to bear on the world. You must determine where you are going so that you can bargain for yourself, so that you don't end up resentful, vengeful, and cruel. You have to articulate your own principles so that you can defend yourself against others taking inappropriate advantage of you, and so that you are secure and safe while you work and play. You must discipline yourself carefully. You must keep the promises you make to yourself and reward yourself so that you can trust and motivate yourself. You need...
That's that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this is a good summary of what he means in the chapter. Well, that's the TLDR version of where you don't need the reasoning for why we don't take care of ourselves like we would our dogs.
Yeah.
If you don't want to go into a little bit darker side of it, this is the TDLR of the chapter, in my personal opinion, right?
Yeah. Let's see. So let's break it down then from probably from the beginning, right? You need to consider the future and think, what might my life look like if I were caring for myself properly? So would you say that what he means by that is that what might my life look like if I'm making the right choices, or is it just about treating yourself properly?
What might if I were caring for myself properly? Well, there's two ways you can go with that. The right choices. Yes, it is the right choices, but it also requires you to figure out, okay, you need to have a goal for where you're going.
Yeah.
You need to figure out, how do I get there? What should I watch out for? How do I reward myself or set the goals to get there? How do I break that up?
Yeah.
So, and then you also need to figure out, okay, if I don't care for myself, what's my life gonna look like then? What's the worst case scenario versus the best likely case scenario, or the best reasonably scenario, reasonably likely scenario? Not like where you're suddenly saying I'm Elon Musk within 5 years, right? That's not a legitimate scenario that's theoretically possible by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah. I'm just reading this, and the only thing I'm really getting out of it, in a way, is just that. What was it called? I kind of already know all of this. I think we all do. You have to make some hard decisions that will probably help you in the long term. You have to make sure.
You have to trade. It comes into what is good is not necessarily happy. It's going to make you happy in the short term. Where you might sit and play for 10 games for 5 hours straight because that makes you happy, and then instead, where that might make you happy, but the proper thing to do, which is if you were caring for yourself like you were your child, the proper thing would do in the long run be doing your homework, if we're going back to the high school scenario, right?
Yeah.
So that's the way you should look at it. What is right, it doesn't mean what's necessarily what's going to make me happy here and now, but it's what's going to give me the best outcome in the long run.
Yeah, it's like I'm gonna start bragging a little. No, but I feel like I think 3 or 4 months ago, I started working out 3 days a week, and I've pretty much kept it up until now. And it's first probably now or last month that I felt like first of all, I felt like I've really gotten more in shape and stuff like that, but it also just helps my mood. you know?
Yeah, it does. I know that perfectly well.
So it's so many hours spent doing something that's honestly kind of boring. It's repetitive, it's boring, it's hard. But now, a little bit in the future, it really has helped. It really makes things better. And there's also just like a lot of order to it. You have a repetitive activity that you do 3 times or something a week.
I think it's stated here somewhere where you create you create habits, so you can so there's room for all the other stuff that is needed to do well in life. So you try to automate as many processes as possible that will make your life proper. So there is room to handle, or room of thought to handle whatever chaos is going to come into your life.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree. Or rather, it sounds right. And you just have to be honest with yourself, really. You know, you have to be disciplined. You have to know what you want to do. And then you have to split it up into small goals that you can actually reach. You can't just, as basically exactly what you said, right? You can't just wish to be a world-renowned scientist or entrepreneur in 5 years. But what you can do is you can say, I want to get a master's degree, I want to get a bachelor's degree, I want to have a very good semester this semester, I want to do very good on one assignment. You just make it smaller, make the goals reachable.
You what I found, at least when I did this a lot, was you set a end goal, and then you set a lot of guideline posts. So you have the ideal, so to speak, which is what we touched earlier on, right? You have the ideal scenario, so to speak. This is where I want to be when I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
Then you set your first goal. Or then you set up a small series of goals which are achievable in the short term, and then slowly build up the length of it. And once you reach when you reach where you thought you were going to be, right, you've realized there's something else to work for, right? But you've already automized all of these processes of other processes that has been needed to make it to your goal.
Yeah.
And that way you can cope with more, and you've become a better human or better person, so you can move up and stand straighter, funnily enough.
Yeah. Well, it all goes together, right? So
It does.
it's
really
all
does.
intertwined. And is that actually all the quotes we have for?
That is all the quotes we have. There's so much more we can go into, especially in chapter 2. Or if we just go from one sub chapter to another, we can be here for another hour at least.
We've already been doing this for soon 1.5, right? So
We've done it for an hour actually only.
okay,
We've
but we
been
still have
been live for
a
an
side
hour.
topic.
We have a side topic, though I wanna wait a little bit with that because I feel like there's so many aspects of we haven't touched upon in chapter 2.
Okay.
Mainly what is order and what is chaos in a deeper sense, because it's just not just what is known, or the known and the unknown, right? As they are, or the mastered and the unmastered. They are a collection of a lot of things. At least at least the way I see it. I in my notes here, right? I've written order is everything known. Order is the masculine aspect. It is, and it's masculine because of order requires a hierarchy, at least from the sense of nature, and in humanity, it's always been traditionally men who've been fighting for hierarchy in the more direct sense. Naturally speaking, mainly because we've been fighting for female mates or female partners, and in humans, women make the choice of their mate, most generally.
Yeah,
Right.
it's it's as you said, primary hierarchical. Oh my god,
Hierarchy.
equal
Hierarchy.
structure of human society is masculine, and it's also, builders of town and cities usually men throughout history.
I've summarized that down to it is everything that is created to lessen the burden of life.
That sounds pretty good. And then you have chaos, right?
Yes.
The feminine.
Yes.
And, I'm just going to actually read the quote here. This is partly because all the things we have come to know were born originally of the unknown, just as all things we encounter were born of mothers. Chaos is matter, origin, source, mother, materia, the substance from which all things are made. Which is, of course, then why, it relates to the feminine.
Yes.
It is.
Yeah, we. Let's see. Chaos is the domain of ignorance itself. Its unexplored. Yeah. This is orders. By contrast, is the exploratory. That's the 100 of millions of years old hierarchy of place, position, and authority. It's the structure of society. It's the structure provided by biology to particular insofar that you are adapted as you are to the structure of society. I butchered that. Order is tribe, religion, hearth, home, and country. It's the warm, secure living room where the fireplace glows and the children play. It's the flag for the nation. It's the value of the currency, like everything that is safe, secure.
Yeah, everything that is known, and that's also you actually got onto a really important point there, kind of with what you said, because it's also, political things. It's your flag, it's your country. But that also means that too much order, too much control, that's suddenly tyrannical. And that's a really important part of order, that too much order leads to tyranny.
And tyranny limits growth.
Yeah.
And it suppresses you. Whereas Corda's negative side, it can literally drown you because there's nothing you can fasten yourself by.
Right.
There's nothing where you can find footing and stand on yourself. Where order can be too rigid, chaos can be like what's
too destructive?
Not destructive.
Too chaotic?
No, I wouldn't. I'm looking for sand, quicksand. That's the one.
Yeah. Quicksand.
It will drag you
or
down.
A maelstrom, or
yeah, the force of nature.
Basically, just something uncontrollable. Well, order is too controllable, and like the advice or the ideal that Jordan Peterson is talking about is that you should have one foot within order and the other foot within chaos to be the optimal human being in a way. You should have something that's safe and that keeps you grounded and helps you, something where you can escape or whatever we're going to call it, but you should also challenge yourself. You should experience new things.
It is in the place between of the things you have mastered and the things you haven't mastered. It's the place for growth, because you have one part of you has the things you've mastered, so you are not in completely uneven ground, or completely down in the quicksand. But there's also room for exploration, which is an important part of human being, because we need to explore, we need to know. To a degree, we are curious creatures, which is why we are searching for knowledge as we are, and why we've, to a degree, have evolved to be what we are.
Yeah. I could actually come with a personal anecdote, or whatever it's called. Because, just to explain this in kind of simpler terms in a real life story about my own life, About a year ago, I started a study that I ended up quitting. And one of the worst parts about that study is that, first of all, I actually got to go back. In high school, I used to do music. So that was basically most of my life, or most of the things I'm good at was music, other than basically computer games. So computer games and music. And then I started a study which had nothing to do with music, nothing to do with gaming. It was actually economy.
Mm.
So when I was in that study, I didn't feel like I was good enough in any of the subjects, and I didn't feel like I had any other thing that could actually keep order in my life. So everything, or the primarily everything, not everything, of course. Of course, I had some orderly elements, but most of my life was just chaos, because I didn't feel like I was good enough. Everything was unknown. I moved to a completely new place that I've never lived before.
So if I'm getting this right, just to clarify it in the simplest terms possible, you had no foundation to build upon.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't feel like I had a proper foundation. And then this year, I started another study, which is what I'm doing right now, which is IT. And here I suddenly feel like, I already have some fundamentals by spending a lot of time in front of the computer, basically.
Mm.
And of course, I just like it better. But all of these fundamentals that I already have, all of these structures that are already in place, just help me, even though it's a completely new study for me, there's still chaos there. There's still the unknown.
You had in the year of where you were studying economy, you've managed to establish a place or
Yeah.
room. You've managed to turn some of this chaos into known territory or order, as you've mastered the physical location of where we are.
Yeah. And then I could then build on that order on in my IT studies. I already had that order, and I also had some, what I call some order, also had some order. Sounds like we're talking about money here, but also had something from just being knowledgeable about computers. And suddenly I feel like I'm almost right in between order and chaos, right?
Mm.
And I think a lot of people go through phases like this in their life, especially people around our age, people who are going to university for the first time, perhaps they're leaving home for the first time. And sometimes it just feels like there's too much chaos. And that's something that happens to pretty much every person,
That's
right?
that's something you have to go through. You have to establish. You have to learn to balance it to a degree, right? Because, and especially when a lot of us, where we are, a lot of us have to move far away to go to universities.
Yeah.
Because there's so many applicants, it's kind of insane. So you have to be ready to move far away, which in it itself is a chaotic element because you're moving away from the safe confines of your home, where you then have to establish yourself and your not living conditions, but rules for how you live.
Yeah.
Whereas you've been before under the tyranny, in quotation mark, hopefully not literal tyranny, not hopefully your parents haven't been literally tyrannical in their nature, but they have had their order where you now have to establish your own. So that's a
Hmm.
chaotic element. Another chaotic element, which Peterson describes, is the element of chaos that suddenly strikes right from the known. Suddenly a relative die. Suddenly your brakes on your car doesn't work. Something needs to be fixed, right?
Yeah.
Chaos is unknown, and it comes even in a place where you believe is order.
Yeah.
He also goes into here in the Bible, with especially back into the Genesis story with Adam and Eve, as a side point here, with the snake inside of inside of paradise, right? Which is
Hmm.
clearly, as he understands it, and as people before him have understood it, is an element of chaos that is there even in what is supposed to be total order. So then we can wonder, right? Well, there's a lot of aspects to wonder in here. Why is it in here? Why is the snake in paradise? Well, there's two ways you can look at it. Either God can't keep chaos away, or he chose to have it as if there's no chaos in your life, where everything is controlled, there's nothing unexplored, nothing to be learned, is maybe not a life worth living at all, and is maybe the lesser of two evils.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's food for thought.
Yeah, it really is. It makes you think, you know.
And then we can take it down even to a family place where you can. I believe the quote is that a mother or father can literally chain the child to the bed to protect them from the outside world, which in that place they then replace the chaos of life with their own tyranny, and they become the tyrant or the chaotic element for the child, which in then hurt them. And now begs the $1 million question, which he asks to parents: would you rather want your child to be safe or strong? I feel like that is such a deep question. I know what I would like for my hopefully eventual child.
Yeah, I would like my child to always wear a life jacket and only eat gluten-free food.
I was gonna wrap mine in bubble plast and call him Jojo and put him
Yes.
into a bubble.
Yes, please do that.
No, I want the child to be strong and to be able to handle the things that are eventually going to be thrown at them, because we cannot protect them forever, just like our parents could not protect us forever, even if they wanted to. And they shouldn't protect us from everything, because how can we learn then? How can we challenge the unknown if we are shielded from it, which then doesn't allow us to grow as people, and then we are a lesser version of what we could be.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what the book essentially is about. It's about improving yourself from day to day.
Yeah, that sounds pretty right.